Greetings, everybody. Welcome to Unheard, another episode. I am Verol Billett, Associate Clinical Psychologist at Dr. KAHLE Morgan and Associates, and also KAHLE Journey, the YouTube channel on which you're watching this. And we have.
And I'm Jason Henry, Associate Counselling Psychologist at Dr. KD Morgan and Associates.
All right, so another episode, Jason.
Indeed.
And so for today, we have plans to talk about a topic that has been around for quite some time. It has gained quite a bit of traction in many areas, in many spaces. It's a topic that personally I have some feelings about in many ways, but I think it's important for us to talk about it, don't you, Jason?
I mean, I think the conversation is long overdue, to be honest.
It's been ongoing, as we said, and we want to add our 2 cents for what it's worth.
Or more. Or more.
So, Jason, what are we talking about today?
So we're talking about toxic masculinity.
Toxic?
Everybody's favorite topic. So
toxic masculinity. Yeah. So this topic, I think the first time I heard the phrase was way before COVID. So.
Oh yeah, I've definitely heard this term since at least 2015.
Yeah, about that. And at first I was like, okay, toxic masculinity, what is that? And based on exposure, based on readings, based on being in various spaces, apparently it is. Being cheeky, it is. And we want to talk about it. We want to talk about what it looks like, or what it is said to look like, where apparently comes from, the contributors to it, and where do we go from here? How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we're going to start with
what
I guess defining it, right? What is toxic masculinity? You want me to just, okay, let me do something. All right, so here we go. What is toxic masculinity? So first things first, there is a distinction between healthy masculinity, unhealthy masculinity, and there's definitely an argument to be said that that toxic masculinity is really like a manifestation of unhealthy masculinity. Mm-hmm. But I think because the term has just like absolutely just taken over, like we just kind of think of, on the one hand you have healthy masculinity, on the other hand you have toxic masculinity. And I believe toxic masculinity is when the strengths of men, and maybe even certain stereotypical things of men, are used or maybe misused to control things, to manipulate others, maybe even to hide certain vulnerabilities. I mean, I would say maybe that's a very strong one. And basically to just kind of illustrate certain mindsets of what a man ought to be rather than the realities of a man, and the fact of the matter is that, hey, men are complex, so you can't just hold up your stress. See, that's a callback. You know what I'm saying? So
check out the first episode.
Thank you. So that's the thing. It's like it's not as simple as, oh yeah, I'm a man. I just do man stuff all the time and whatever. There are certain times where it goes to a dangerous extent. It hurts not just the man, but also those that he loves.
Everybody, because we can see it in our society where males, have this idea as to what a man should be. And that comes with a whole lot. Because now, you mentioned going to the extreme. We see where men themselves are hurting, women are hurting, children are hurting as a result of these behaviors. So if we're talking about toxic masculinity, it really captures those destructive patterns of behaviors that are ascribed to what a man should be, but in turn, it really does negatively impact our country, or people, or society at every level, at every level. And therefore, we see aggression,
Mhm.
we see manipulation, we see injustice, we see crime, violence, we see
I was
a,
going to say something.
a
We see people taking people out of car and
yes,
putting them on the ground
serious
and
issue,
road rage,
road
right?
rage.
Yeah,
We
call it that.
see constant disrespect. We are seeing how uh, persons are treated in relationships, intimate partner violence.
But then the irony is that some people don't even think that toxic masculinity is real.
That is true. So basically, they think that, oh, this is normal. This is what a man should be.
That's the irony. So it's like, how can there be toxic masculinity if this is just the default setting of men? And if you don't fall into that default setting of men, then you're probably just not a guy. You're just not a man, apparently. That's the thinking.
So, Jason, I'm going to ask a question. I don't know if I can answer it. Maybe you can.
Okay.
What is a man? Who should a man be? Well, multiple questions. What is a man? Who should a man be?
Mhm.
Or what should manhood look like? What should masculinity look like?
Yeah, so that's a semi-loaded question, I would say. I mean, because you could talk about what a man is biologically, you could talk about what a man is sociologically, you could talk about what a man is psychologically, you could talk about what a man is in terms of the role that he plays in society. There's so many different factors, gender, sex, all this stuff. And so, I mean, you want just like, I mean, honestly, you want my just definition? My definition is just, yo,
Man, a
a
man.
man, okay, that's good. Man, a man. But a man is a male, an adult male. That's kind of what it is. If you want to talk about the behaviors, no, we're talking about certain characteristics of a man. So personally, I'm not the type of person. This is just my opinion, but I'm not the type of person who is like, oh yeah, you're not a real man if you don't do this, that. To me, that doesn't help at all. I've never seen it help anybody, even if the intention is positive. But I've never really seen it help anybody. You should be this. You should be a man. Da, da, da. Like, what if we said you should be a woman? Okay, so the woman, let's say she can't give birth or something, or she can't cook, or she doesn't know how to clean. The stereotypical things that women have been raised to be and do, and these societal roles. So because she can't do that, so she's now not a woman. So what? She's a man now, or she's just not a good woman now. But that's the thing. That's a
She's not a
characteristic.
full woman because she can't carry a child, which
Danger,
is
dangerous.
which
That
is a sad thing to say, in
yeah,
my opinion, because it therefore diminishes the woman to just being a childbearer. And I know that is a very touchy topic right now. And I think the same is true for a man.
yeah,
Okay? Because now, so in essence, there's no one version of masculinity.
agreed.
It shows up in various forms. We are all shaped by different experiences, and therefore, your masculinity will look different from one to another. I'm sure there's certain commonalities based on our biology, based on shared experiences, based on socialization, but at the same time, we cannot forget, I think, we can't forget the uniqueness that we all have.
Absolutely, because we don't all play the same roles. So
Right.
even if, like, as psychologists, we have to be more in touch with our feelings. We literally have to. If we can't do that, we're doing a massive disservice to the people who put their trust in us to with their stories, with their lives, family, goals, dreams, fears, right? But the truth of the matter is, people might be like, yeah, but to be in touch with your emotions, like that's so feminine. Galting that.
That is
So
true.
but the problem is, like, think about, like, even like the fathers of psychology. If they never cared about those type of things, we wouldn't really have psychology today. And I'm not saying that women weren't a part of that lineage. Of course they were. But it's both of us that were a part of the lineage. We need both perspectives, because if we don't have both perspectives, well, one hand can't clap. So I don't know. So yeah.
All right. So going back to the core of what we're supposed to be talking about today, the toxic masculinity. From my experience, right, I've seen where men have gotten a bad rap. Men have been dragged. Men are dogs, apparently, and we've been dragged and cussed out and whatnot by some of our female counterparts. I'm trying not to generalize,
Some men too.
right? And some men too. So it therefore feels like there's no it's a lose lose situation, because if you can't show up like this according to the other man, then it's a problem. If you can't show up like this for females, and there are various perspectives of what that would look like from what I've experienced and seen, that's also a problem. What if we do?
Maybe this is a good time to talk about the roots. Maybe that's how we would. That's what will help us to understand where we're coming from,
Mm-hmm.
so we can then come up with some solutions.
Okay. So if we're talking about the roots, where toxic masculinity is concerned, I need to
It's
slow
weird. It's
things
a weird
down.
word to say.
Yeah.
Toxic masculinity. There's too much. Yeah, getting into the phonics now. We can't bother with that. Go on.
Right. There are various contributors. We can go back to slavery. There's a piece of work by Dr. Joy DeGray, which spoke about post-traumatic slave syndrome, which speaks about how the slavery experience impacts all of us who have been derived from that lineage, right? And maybe we can even go even further. Well, it's all wrapped up in that. From Africa coming over, you're taken away. You have been made powerless, dominated. Your families have been separated
Because of other men,
because of
ironically.
other men, and you are now in a space where you're controlled. Your sense of identity, your sense of connection is just gone because you're now an object. Mm-hmm. And so that when you read the book, and I really suggest that persons read the book, we're talking about the rise of hypersexuality among men, uh, aggression, over aggression, hyper independence, which have some disastrous impact,
Lack of vulnerability.
lack of vulnerability, lack of trust, and the list goes on. And we see that now, well, I do, in our society among a number of men who find it very difficult to lower their guards, even when there's no reason to be on the defense.
Agreed.
Many women talk about, oh, I want, and this is, many women talk about, I want my man to be more in touch and to be more,
They do.
to be to be there for me, to embrace me, to be more romantic, to see me as his safe space,
Show the sensitive side.
show the sensitive side. But here's the thing: how is it are we going to get there if our society doesn't foster that? Because it's not a switch that you flip. It's not a switch that you flip. It's something that has to be taught and encouraged and, cultured as we grow.
And if the environment is not one that is safe for vulnerability, you're just pushing him into the ground. You're just pushing him into the grave. You're just kind of reinforcing
Mm-hmm.
those same negative behaviors that you would want to minimize. or heal.
Mhm.
Right.
And it also goes back again to the plantation society. Bear with me. I hope we're not mixing you up, right, or confusing anybody. But when a woman, she has her child, her male child, on the plantation society, men are objects, men are the breeders, men are the ones who go out and push hard. And if he has a particular physique, then he's going to be sold for top dollar. So a woman, in her way of protecting that little boy, she's going to do what? She's going to tear him apart.
You have to toughen him up.
She's going to toughen him up. What's going on this evening? Right?
Drink some more.
Right? Degrade him.
Right.
Right? She's going to tear him apart. So if anybody comes on to him and say, yo, your son looking like he's growing into a nice young man, strong. No, in what list? Don't
Sounds
we
familiar.
Sounds familiar because we see it today.
Exactly.
In 2025, I'm still hearing children saying, boy, I did an exam, I did a test, I'm going to get 95%. And I am disappointed. 95% and you're disappointed? What happened? My parent is going to ask me, my mom is going to ask me, my father is going to ask me, where's the 5%?
Because perfection is the expectation, which is impossible.
Now, wrapped up in that is the whole notion which we very well see today, man not for cry, man not for soft, man not for show certain things. Apparently, it seems as if men are only permitted to show happiness and anger.
It's exactly why they say man up. What? Because the thing is, when they say man up, what is the synonym for man? It would be toughen up, become strong. So it's being a man. It's synonymous with strength, and it's not that is wrong.
Resilience is important.
Resilience is important, but as we spoke about in the last episode, how can I ever really be strong if I don't first acknowledge and admit my weakness? It's not possible. I will just be pretending to be strong, which I think a lot of men are. They have a facade of strength, but that facade manifests itself as being loud, being boisterous. Yeah, I'm gonna like pull out my lass out of the side of my car if you bother me, that kind of stuff.
There is also, Jason, this whole idea that when when we see certain things in our boys, we have to just beat it out of them. So punishment is the way to go.
True.
So it's a part of the toughening up process. Then beat it out of them so that they can toughen up. Him too soft. Give him hard things to do. Push him, because it can make him better. While I'm not, it is possible that that type of training,
discipline.
I wouldn't call it discipline.
Right, that's true.
Right.
Yeah,
But that type of training, Zine, can push and has pushed many, many boys to toughen up and to just, get up and push through and no matter, don't complain. Don't share push them for all of them stress.
Right.
Right? We have a situation where a number of our boys growing into men are not emotionally mature.
Facts.
Which, in my opinion, goes against what it means to be human.
Facts.
Right? And so it's important that we look at that. We can touch on our school system too.
Yes, let's do that. because I do
let,
actually have something to say
let
about
me
that.
ask you a question, Jason.
Mm.
What was it like for you in school as a boy growing up?
I'm probably not the best example of this. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. Because the thing is, it was kind of always obvious to me. I kind of just lucked out in that regard in terms of like I could see what was going on in society. I could understand like there was a certain expectation for me to be a particular way, but this is where my masculinity comes out. I don't really conform to just what everybody tell me to do,
Hmm.
right? And that's just me. You know what I'm saying? And so part of the reason that I just never did that kind of stuff was because I could always see how it hurt people,
Hmm.
right? Because you can't ignore the positives of strength. You can't ignore the positives of resilience. You can't ignore the ability to defend yourself. You can't ignore the ability to defend other people.
Hmm.
These are important things. Masculinity this is why masculinity is so championed and why it's so desired.
Hmm.
But growing up, you see people misusing masculinity. But I'm going to touch on something else. So sometimes I'll be talking to like teens and I'll talk to them. I ask them like, "Oh, who's your friend?" That was something that was tricky for me for a few years, making friends. Maybe I was like too over ego. Then I kind of calmed down and then I was able to make friends. Um, but I talk to the youth them and they're like, I'm gonna really have a friend. Okay, but I see you part with that man there and that man there, and then you're like, yeah, I have people to talk to, but
Hmm.
I'm gonna really have a friend like that. So then I'm like, oh wait, where is this being reinforced? A lot of the music is a lot like this. People don't really trust people, and a lot of the music reflects that distrust of others, this reliance on self, not just like with regards to women, but not being able to trust your own brother. Because again, of course, only your friend know your secret, so only he can reveal it
And hurt you.
and hurt you. And so I don't doubt that a lot of those dudes experience that. I don't doubt that they experience that. And so to them, there's a very strong justification for not being vulnerable and for trying to deceive people into what's really going on.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, there's a difference between being mindful of who is trustworthy and who's not trustworthy and just thinking that everybody's untrustworthy.
Hmm. Interesting. I want to take it from the standpoint of our education system, where boys are concerned. I have serious concerns for our boys and education because I find our women are more educated, our women will continue up. We can always look at the statistics about the gender difference, the huge gender difference,
We revel in being fully done, as them say.
right? School now taken away. Uh, look at they look at persons who they take on as role models, who for them school is not important, you know, and so it's about how do I get rich quick, right?
Wow. Yes. Yes.
And school is not that. A part of the situation, we can all look at society, we can look at music, we can look at all these other things. But I think that to some extent, our education system is not curated in such a way that speaks to or captures a number of our boys.
Mhm.
Some
Agree.
persons may not agree. I do know, though, that there are a number of educators out there who have and they have used their own creativity to capture boys and inspire boys and try to get to understand them. I think I went to an all boys school. I think it takes a special person to really
Mm.
work with boys who don't want to learn and really get them to learn.
Agreed.
Right? Because it does require, especially now, it requires breaking away from the conventional, the traditional way of doing things, and be more creative and be more interactive. The sitting down in a classroom for 1 hour, just sitting with somebody about your ears about God knows what, not making it relevant.
Pythagoras theorem. Yeah.
Well, I think it's Pythagoras theorem. Anyways,
Been a while.
but how does the persons may question how does that contribute to the whole toxic masculinity? Let's the mindset,
Yeah.
the no culture, the instant gratification, needing things now, here and now, because that is what we see being enforced. There's also expectations adding to that. As a man, you need to start have a child by a certain age. You need to have in some spaces you still need to have multiple women. You can't use the word love to your woman, right?
I rate you.
Or rate you.
It's different.
Yeah, I'm a
Or it's the
Dan, yeah, I'm
same
a
thing.
G.
Whichever.
Right? And then what it means to be financially stable. I think a lot of it comes down to money. Now that I'm thinking about it,
It
as a
does.
man, it's defined. It is defined by what you can provide, what you can give, how you can manage, how you can protect.
Which again is another positive thing about masculinity. But
Right.
how far are you taking it? Continue.
Yeah. How is it done? Is it hurting? And I think this is. I think that this is what we can reduce it to in a way. Is it that as a man, whatever I'm doing, is it hurting other people? Am I hurting myself? I think that's very important. And if you want to check yourself in terms of am I a toxic person? Am I hurting other people in the process of what I'm doing? Anyways, so yeah, so do when we look at education, is it helping us, helping our boys, helping our men to be their best self? Are the strategies, the techniques, or whatever it is that the lessons, are they meeting the needs of our boys? Not just the academic needs, but as a whole person.
There was one thing like historically, because there was a point in time where it was really only boys going to school.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of being able to learn, there was more of an obvious responsibility. So those roles were far more regimented between men and women. Because if boys are the ones going to school, well, I got to learn about geography, and I got to learn about Pythagoras' theorem, and I got to learn about the periodic table, and I got to learn about, building technology and TD and everything. So it's like it was much clearer the role of the boy, the role of the man. But then when women also girls entered education, and not only did they do well, but they exceeded
Oh
men.
yeah.
That was a problem because now it was like, well, if this is my responsibility and women are better, it's not necessarily that they're better, but they're more eager. Especially, we're talking like 3 generations ago. They were way eager to learn because they're getting this opportunity. Finally, I get to learn. I get to go to school. I don't have to do this homemaking stuff that just felt so limiting and so limited. So now I get to try this new thing and I'm interested in this new thing. And, I see men go out there into the world and they make moves and they do this and that and rate. So now women can do the exact same thing. And the ability to do that, they value that, they relish that. And with men who, yeah, I take it for granted to a little bit, to a certain degree. Now they're kind of put to the side, and now they have to fight for that place. They have to fight for that relevance. Whereas before, yeah, what is my strength? It is this. Okay, well, I can do a thing. Yeah, I can do this. Yeah, I can do that. But now it's like they're not. They're not. There's not. You're not really doing the 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 house husband thing. So you're not really doing that.
Which man can be house husband
See, that's
and
what.
not be ridiculed?
And there you go. So when that is that, when you so your role is not in the home, and your role used to be outside the home, but now the competition for that is way harder with people who value it more because they didn't get it historically. Challenges.
Challenges. I also want us to touch on this whole concept of independence, hyper independence. When last you ask somebody for help you with something?
So I was actually going to ask you for help earlier, and I was like, I can figure this out. I'll just check the manual and then I'll figure it out. And I was like, you don't think this is ironic? This is really ironic because we're supposed to talk about this thing. I'll ask him later. I'll ask him tomorrow. So there it is.
So, if you realize there is a process, second and third guessing, should I, shouldn't I? Mhm. The reality is, from my experiences, men feel like they need to figure it out, they need to work through it, they need to just not ask for the help. But that's not, we can't go through life so. Because I know it does take me I have traveled a journey where this is concerned. I can talk. I have traveled a journey. I sit down and I'll match it out. Persons will look at me and say I'm very independent and I know how I'm very resourceful. I know how to if I'm confronted with an issue, I like to solve problems. And I will sit down and figure it out. I will sit down and match it out. I'll go and read. I'll go and watch videos. Ask for help.
It's tricky.
But now I've gotten better, and I'm more open, willing to ask for help. I'll know who to go to when I need to go to them and ask for the help that I need. But it does come with it's a humbling experience, and if it's a humbling experience, then what it means is I have now allowed myself to be vulnerable to hear the word no because that is an option for the person. Hear the word no, and the world not gonna end. It's just that I have to ask somebody else.
I will give one caveat. So there's someone out there that's thinking, but sometimes I don't want to ask for help too much and become too dependent.
Being
So
a
you,
burden.
right. And so you see a certain theme here, right? Where the strength, the resilience, asking for help.
But it's also a sign of weakness. Just want to say that.
But that's exactly it, right? The problem is it's not some of the things that are deemed masculine or stereotypically masculine to a certain degree, they're okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you do need to kind of be like, all right, hold on. What if I would just read this thing properly? Maybe the answer is actually in the manual or in the thing. I mean, a lot, but again, that's a very big stereotype. I'm not reading manual. That's weird. And so to them, it's like, no, I can figure it out. But sometimes it's like, actually, you probably do need to read a manual because you might actually mess up the thing. And so there's something about the ingenuity of experimentation that is masculine. But when you take it too far,
yeah,
you need, and that's the thing. So you need to be honest about that, or vulnerable about that, or modest, as you said before.
Yeah, you said that a while ago. I had a flashback. Um, Usually when I get something new, I'm not reading the manual. I still can fiddle with it to figure it out. And if there's something that I just can't get, then yes, I'll read the manual. I'll get there. But interacting with females, they go for the manual first, and I find that very, very interesting. All right, very, very interesting. All right. Um, do you think, Jason, ready?
Okay, yeah.
Do you think the the so the adjective, right? The adjective toxic should only be placed alongside masculinity.
Oh, right, yeah.
Uh, what about toxic femininity? Is it also contributing to this idea of toxic masculinity? You see, I prefer to ask the question.
No, that's fine. I mean, as a therapist, you ask questions, so it makes perfect sense. But absolutely, I would definitely have to say toxic femininity is a thing, just as toxic masculinity is a thing. I mean, as a one great example, um, perhaps some of the most toxic men are those who look at that woman who can't give birth,
Mm,
and they're like, "Oh, it's like something wrong with her," right? So if you think to yourself, "That's a messed up guy," the woman who looks at the man who struggles to make money or struggles to be physically strong, who struggles in certain emotional ways, right, whatever those ways may be, what's the difference? Would you
mm,
not also call that toxic femininity? Because there's a certain expectation of you should be able to perform at optimal level at all times,
mm,
right? In addition
mhm,
to, if we're talking toxic, like in a more general sense, you do have women who they look down on other women because they're not beautiful. Yeah, you have women who look down on other women because
But
there's a
they,
certain social grace that they lack,
but they don't dress like them, they don't behave like them, they don't fit the same mold that
right?
they
Or they're
think,
too masculine.
or they're too masculine. But I think it also transfers over if we are saying that there is toxic femininity, and I'd like to agree, because I think anybody can possess these what we call toxic traits. It does affect men because now men don't feel safe. And it may sound weird to some people, but yeah, man, or if you not feel safe. Yeah, but I'm we can put this out there. I think I'm bold enough to put this out there. I find that many men out there are playing roles. They're performing the role of being a man or being masculine, sorry, because it is fitting the director's guidelines of what masculinity looks like. Okay? And so if I want to be with a particular woman, I'm going to try and fit that role. I'm going to try and meet the various descriptors on her list that she says she wants and just do that. And in some cases, for some men, there's a denial of their genuine needs, their emotional needs, their mental needs, just so I can keep this woman happy, or just so I can be with this woman, or just so I can perform this role as boss, or whatever the case may be, or I can be respected or feared. But genuinely, I want something else, and so that leads to no matter if you're in a relationship, you have a family, or whatever, we can call it that many men out there are lonely. They experience genuine loneliness. They don't know where to turn, who to turn to, because as much as the woman said, but I am here, I want to be your safe space, they don't feel safe with you. They don't feel safe with anybody. Some cases, they don't even feel safe with themselves. And so I think it's time that we recognize that pointing fingers and say, oh, the whole toxic masculinity thing is just a man thing. No, it's a everybody thing because that affect everybody.
Yep. So touching on you not even feeling safe with yourself, that might sound kind of meta. That sound like What do you mean by that? It basically it boils down to the criticism starts here. The problem is here, and the criticism is here. Yeah, there's criticism externally, but I criticize myself first. If I criticize myself first, I mean, why would I even say anything to myself? Why would I even want to admit anything to
Mm-hmm.
myself? And then I think this then kind of dovetails into those psychological problems,
Mm-hmm.
the anxieties, the
The
depressions,
substance
the
usage
substance abuse, and
and
even
addictions.
the personality disorders.
Oh yeah.
So
Mhm.
Dr. Hicklin had a. I remember when,
Oh.
yeah, he did a study with regards to personality disorders, and to this day, I still can't believe that the prevalence. It's like I I kind of agree, but it still seemed too
Shocking, right?
high. It seemed too high. And then when you look at the measure was more resolute. That's not the right word. More stringent, more
Mhm.
strict, and you still came up with that much.
Mhm.
It was kind of
I
scary.
don't provide no false information, so maybe in post edits we can drop the stats on the screen,
Yeah, we can look it up.
right?
We
Or
can look it
send
up.
you to do the reading. Reading is fundamental, right? But yeah, it's a lot of things out there, and I think we can go on and on and on, and we touch on a number of things. But before we wrap up, I think it's important to figure out, okay, what would do from here? So,
Mm.
where do we move on from? How do we move on from here? How do we make things better? Mhm. I think I mentioned it's an it's everybody's business. Everyone has a role. What works for one does not work for another person. So in the conversation about safe spaces, as women, you're beautiful, you're wonderful, but you also have to allow your man space to be, okay? In that, what you may consider to be a safe space, he may not. And so he needs to define what safe space is, what that looks like, how that works for him. And therefore, that can help to guide you in how you help to support that, not provide it, but help to support that because you may not be the one to provide it. Okay? Also, as men, we have to be honest. We have to be honest with self. I think, confront some things that we probably are running from ourselves individually as a collective. But I also think having these types of conversations, this is not going to be the end of it. Having conversations continuously with your brethrens, other men, women, yeah, your voices are important to us, but I think on this matter, in order to push ourselves as men forward, we have to be having these real, honest conversations with the men. Because you know what, Jason, what I've found, if I'm going through something, then chances are other men are going through it.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. It's not me alone. But there's a shame that is felt because when we miss the mark or we feel as if we are not perfect or we do not fill the role as much as we can or as best as we are expected to, expected to, because I think expectation is a huge baggage
That's part of it. Yeah.
on a lot of us.
Mm.
And we need to get rid of that as because nobody has it all together, yo. We're all figuring it out. We're all doing our thing, trying to make it work. And as a man, if we're going to tap into the whole notion that a man should protect and provide, can you truly protect and provide if up here and in here not wholesome?
It's gonna be very difficult.
Very
It's
difficult,
very
I agree.
difficult because, you know, we're talking about like relationship issues, societal issues. It's not that I don't believe that, men are setting out to do these bad things to people,
Mm-mm.
blah blah blah. I mean, okay, fine, maybe there's like a gang culture element where we have to go and hurt these people so that we feel safe. But
But
that's just a whole lot of.
what got them to the gang?
I mean,
Well, that's
I
another.
mean, various factors, but certainly the
Right,
toxicity is one of those things.
right. I honestly think that we need to, pull back on the whole generalisms and labeling the whole notion that all men are dogs, and recognize that there are men out there. A lot of us as men, we are out there trying. We are not getting things right for whatever reason. There's a reason for every behavior, for whatever reason, and we do need some help. So as men, we can accept the help and from the right sources, but also we need support. If you say you love us, do it unconditionally,
Tricky. We understand
right?
that that is difficult,
But
but yeah, go ahead.
yeah, yeah. If you say you love us and there's a willingness to work, granted, we all have our boundaries and their limits. Just that's a bit contradictory, though. Because if I'm saying love us unconditionally, but there are limits to what you're gonna put up with.
Well, maybe I can help with that. So the goal is that unconditional love, but the thing about it is that it's when people come together, there is gonna be friction, there are gonna be challenges, there's gonna be conflict, but those conflicts can be, if not resolved, they can be accepted. Because there's always gonna be, because again, if no one is perfect,
Mm-hmm.
that would therefore mean that we'd have to accept imperfection.
Yes.
And if you're accepting imperfection, fantastic. That now means that I can accept my own imperfections. That now means that I don't have to pressure myself to show up in this way all the time simply because I never could to begin with.
Mm.
And if that's the case, now I can give myself permission to kind of relax
And grow.
and grow and give other people the chance to relax and grow. And if we can actually have a society, or let's start with just ourselves. We can do that for ourselves. We can do that for get to the next step, family to the next step, community to the next step, society to the next step, country to the next step,
Mm.
world. Things can get better.
Yeah.
That toxic masculinity will decrease more and more and more. I think the toxic femininity as well would decrease more and more and more because I think as one increases, the other increases.
Mm. Thanks for that.
Yeah, man.
Right. So, uh, to close out, I guess what I'd say is all of us stop trying to live in such a way that it's all expectations being placed on others and not and have those expectations overshadow the human that is in front of you or beside you. And what I mean by that is I've heard it from men, those expectations to fill those societal roles, the bag heavy, not even heavy, but the bag heavy. And it's a situation where many men don't have it sometimes, don't have it all the time to carry that load. And we all need help, but we all need to feel safe to ask for the help that we need because there's a lot of imploding happening and exploding, and that need to cut out.
I mean, so even in terms of like just modeling the behavior that we see,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if you're a boy, you're growing into a man. yeah, sure, maybe like internally you know something about that, but a lot of it will be based off of just like social learning, modeling
Hmm.
the men around you. If the men around you are not healthy, the men around you are not like healthily masculine, if the men around you see vulnerability as a threat, see love as something for the gal them, it's
Maybe,
never going to, sorry,
maybe.
maybe, right? It's going to be, it's always going to be a challenge to keep up this facade, because the fact of the matter is we're men. So we know say you lie, so stop lie. We know say you're hurt, you feel a way about stuff, and you're not tell nobody. Don't
Yeah,
lie. We know, we've been there.
been there, done that.
So, and it doesn't really work to maintain the illusion that, yeah man, I have it, I'm good, yeah, I have my car, my money, I'm a gal, and ray, because the symbols of success ain't gonna trick us. We know that, yeah, you might have that, but we don't know that people out there are going the worst ways, even though they look like they have it all.
Miserable and lonely,
Exactly.
in pain.
Even lonely with people around them.
Exactly, exactly. They're not alone, they're lonely. There's a
Precisely.
difference.
Yes.
And so that's not going to serve you in the long run. So if you want us, if you want to find us, we are located at 68 Lady Musgrave Road, Dr. K.A.D. Morgan and Associates, KAHLE Journey Limited. You can reach out to us. You'll see our social media handles in the description on the screen, hopefully. And yeah, just reach out and we can chat more. Please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Share with your friends. Tell a friend to tell a friend as we continue to explore various issues. We're not afraid to chat about nothing. We're going to talk about things you may like, you may not, but stay with us because I think these conversations about men for men needs to be heard.
Not
I've
unheard.
not on. They have gone unheard for far too long, and I think it's time for them to be heard. We think so. So stick around. I am Verol Billett, licensed associate clinical psychologist,
I'm Jason Henry, Associate Counseling Psychologist.
and we'll see you on the next episode of Unheard.
Thanks for watching.
Take care.